I almost said don't bring it because I've already had so much caffeine today. But
Oh, yeah.
So, bro, I need a haircut.
Mm-hmm.
It's real bad.
You want to see when you needed a haircut, though? Look on the wall.
Listen, I think this is worse.
No,
Dude, this is look at this.
Not longer than it was on
You know
there.
what?
Today we're going to be talking about haircuts.
And how you don't have one
No, I have not had a haircut in
ever.
a long time. 8 years? Almost
8
9.
years.
Yeah, about 8 years.
I mean, if you think about it like this, the average American pays what, maybe like $15 to $20 every 2 weeks to a month.
The amount of savings I have, not just in haircuts not delivered, but if I was to sell my dreads, you know what a good clean dread goes for on the open market? $10 a dread.
Dang.
So I hear.
Investments.
Stonks.
Stonks.
I have a lot of money in my head right now. No. That's actually not.
This is Investing 101 with Josh Parkin.
It's actually not what we're going to talk about today, but I guess kind of a slight theme to that, though, being content.
We're talking about contentment. Welcome back, by the way.
Welcome back to What Matters Most. Yeah. You're still Danny.
Is this just our thing now?
I'm still Josh.
Still Josh.
I have not changed. Coffee is good. Dutch Brothers is the best. Shameless plug. What does it mean to be content? Like, what does it look like?
Oh.
If you were to look at somebody and be like, they look really content.
Well, I mean, just like, you mean like just overall in life?
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like it's hard to say content overall because like there's a lot of things you should be content about, but then there's also other things that I feel like if you're not content, it's kind of okay because it's like maybe it's a hobby or something you enjoy, you know, constantly. But I think contentment overall, meaning maybe content with just like family, spiritually and all that. I think when I think of a content human in Christ, I think of someone who like feels not like ready to die, but almost, you know, it feels like ready to be with God. Because to me, and I mean to anyone, that's a sign of this person not only understands like all of that and what's after this life, but also understands that this life is something that, you know, you should be content with because it's, in the grand scheme of things, nothing. And if you have, you know, you've come to Christ and you've served Him and you've been faithful to Him, I mean, that ultimately is what contentment is about, you know. And if you've kind of lived out His purpose for you, which, you know, it looks different, obviously, on like a macro scale for every single person, but like ultimately, like living for Him, living this life for Him. And I think if you feel secure in that, then you're content in that, and you're content in this life.
So diving in even just a little bit more, like if you were to look at someone.
We're pinching the screen, we're pulling it a little bit. Yeah, okay.
If you were to look at someone, what does, and first impression kind of thing, what does being content look like physically on somebody? Like, does it look like, or does it look like, you know, like what kind of, you need to act this out. No, when you meet somebody or when you see someone, what is the look? What is that? Just what does that look like?
So like again, like you're just talking about their outward appearance.
Yeah, sure. A physical clue that if somebody is truly content, what is something that a look that they have? I mean, it's kind of a trick question.
I don't know if there's something you're trying to get at here.
Yeah, I'm always trying to get at something.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
But just kind of thinking about it off the top of my head, I feel like a content person is also going to be a happy person, and someone that's not uptight and angry. And that's kind of the lifestyle they live because they're content and they're happy. So, I would say a genuine happiness. Because, you know, when you go to like shake someone's hand. And,
No.
Oh, right. No, we don't do that now. Sorry. When you go to like touch someone's elbow like that, you know how you can just kind of get that vibe, whether they're, you know, genuinely happy and genuinely excited to be like living life or not, because maybe they're still desperately chasing something. And so that's the best I can come up with right now off the top of my dome.
Yeah. It's, to me, it's there's not this crazy desperation. There's a almost a satisfied look with them,
Satisfied,
where
that's
they're not maybe as prone to being anxious or prone to being like, oh, I got to do this now, or, you know, there's a contentment there that is leveling. Does that make sense?
Yeah, let me paint a picture. Okay, so you're at the gas station, right? Now the guy on the front slot has just pulled out, but you're still getting gas in the back one, right? Now you're in a pretty big car, and he's in a pretty big car, the guy behind you, and yet he still weasels his big 4x4 through the 4 cars, backs it up.
This sounds terribly specific.
30 seconds before you're done, so he could have just pulled up from the back. That's not contentment. Yeah,
that's a beautiful picture.
I know.
That is a beautiful picture.
Well, it's not a beautiful picture because I was like, but you get the point.
You got his license number though, right?
Oh yeah.
No, but
Wait,
that's
1, 2. No.
That is a really good illustration where contentment or being content looks like, acts like, feels like that. Where if you're truly content, you're not in a hurry. You're not rushing from one thing to the next. You're content, but you're also very diligent about what you schedule and what you do, because it's very difficult to be content if you've always got one thing after the next thing after the next thing after the next thing.
Right.
You're always striving for something. It can be difficult to be content if you're always looking at what somebody else has, right? Because then you can start coveting or saying, I'll be happy when I get this, or I'll be happy if I get this.
Yeah.
And it's a struggle, man, because I have constantly measured things growing up. Like, you know, when I was 2, I wanted to get married. Well, that wasn't, you know, not going to happen, right? when
I'm 18 and I still haven't had that. So.
You still don't have that, right? But when, you know, there's always one more thing, right?
Yeah.
When I was 8 or 9, I wanted a BB gun. Well, then I got a BB gun at some point, and then I wanted a bike, and then I wanted a car. And
you wanted a real gun.
Yeah. You know, and it's like, okay, there needs to be, and I'm not saying we need to not want things, but contentment comes when we're actually happy with what we have, and we're not striving or putting a condition on like, well, I'll be happy if, or I'll be happy when. Contentment doesn't come from getting what you really want.
Right.
It comes from being happy with what you already have.
Yeah.
Because if you're like, well, I'll be content when I get this, that's not really contentment, you know, and that will leave us hollow and empty and really pretty frustrated.
Yeah.
Because we'll get to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing. And it's like, well, I'll be content if I get a Dutch Bros. Well, then you finish your Dutch Bros, and now what? You want another Dutch Bros? No. You want something else.
Diabetes.
Yeah. No. Okay, so keeping with Scripture, there's a verse in Philippians 4:12 through 13, which I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard. If you haven't heard it, this is a really good one, and I hope you enjoy it. So, 12. Okay, I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation. Wouldn't that be cool, right? Whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want, I can do everything through him who gives me strength. That is a beautiful picture of when we focus in and we learn the secret of being content in every situation, whether we have a bunch of stuff or nothing. It puts us in a spot where we're like,
No, let me, on that, I was just thinking as you were saying, you know, in plenty or not and all that, like, obviously in parts of the world where they have very, very little, it seems that they're almost happier. And so don't you think, doesn't it seem at least that there's a direct correlation between more like material things and more material focused mentality and less happiness? Like I think the more things you have and the more things you're used to having, like the less content you are, if that makes sense.
And I think that's why he talks about it being, I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, because it is something that doesn't necessarily make sense on the front end, and maybe is a little bit of a secret because people don't, it's not readily known. You would think that, well, I'll be happy if, I'll be content if, there's always an if on there where, or an if or a when.
Right.
And that's not really, that's the secret, is you can't hook it to that. You have to be like, well, I am content.
It's like when you're a little chilling, right? And you get the Lego set and then you build it and you're like, sick. And build it again, right?
I want another one.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Yeah. Yep. And the reason why it's so important is my hope is that for each of us in wherever we're at in life right now, that we can be content and happy and thankful and grateful for what we have right now. And we're not anxious or frustrated or stressing over what we don't have, or what we really want, or that kind of stuff. It will come. Like there is a season for everything. There is stuff out there, and I have to remind myself of that, because there's so many things that I can stress myself out over or be not content in. Everything from a house to a car to where I'm at in life or whatever. But when I look at the things that I'm really, really content in and like settled in, like I am content where I'm at in ministry. I am not striving. I'm not anxious. I'm not trying to do anything more of that. The fruit of that is incredible. There's so much peace and there's so much calm there where, I want to get better. And I want things for the group. And I have vision and that kind of stuff. But I'm not like, man, I'll be happy when the youth group gets to this size, or I'll be happy when this happens, or that's not, there isn't a contingency on there. I'm like, I'm happy with where we're at. Right. And, with what's going on, because even in the midst of all of this, there's things that I've done in faith. There's things that I've moved around to where I know that God is working good stuff through this, and I'm content to wait and see what God's going to continue to do. It can be difficult. And like we talked about last week with the perseverance, that can be difficult as well, right?
Yeah.
And persevering and being content in all situations, sticking through and just being like, you know what, I'm not hanging my hat on the next big thing.
Yeah, we're content shooting a podcast every week. We don't need to do multiple ones in the same day. Like,
no,
that's ridiculous.
Why would we do that?
That's so
that'd be ridiculous.
Out of this world.
Okay, let's go to the next verse here.
Let's.
Okay. We got 1 Timothy 6, 4 through 10. This might get a little punchy, but sometimes, a lot of times the Bible can get kind of punchy. Kind of hits you and you're like, ooh, that hit me right on the nose.
I know.
1 Timothy 6, 4 through 10. And context-wise, this section of the verse is talking about the love of money and that whole thing. So, Jesus, godly teaching, he's conceited and understands nothing. He has an unhealthy interest in controversies and quarrels about words that result in envy, strife, malicious talk, evil suspicions, and constant friction between men of corrupt mind, who have been robbed of the truth and who think that godliness is a means to financial gain. But godliness with contentment is great gain. For we brought nothing into the world, and we can take nothing out of it. But if we have food and clothing, we will be content with that. People who want to get rich fall into temptation and a trap, and into many foolish and harmful desires that plunge men into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. Some people, eager for money, have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. So when it kind of paints a pretty bleak picture. And again, in the context of money, but that's probably the most popular form of being discontent, or
Yeah, absolutely.
is, I don't make enough money. We're always measuring success off of how much you make or what kind of job you have. And man, some of the most profoundly content times was, man, when I was working at Christian Supply selling Christian music. Like, I was so happy. I made next to nothing doing that, but I was more content than, well, not more content than being a youth pastor. I definitely love that. But you find those pockets where it's not about the money. If it's about the money, you're probably not going to be very content in it.
Yeah.
You're probably going to be pretty anxious and flustered with that. Or always looking at like, well, I need to do this, I need to do better, I need to do this, and so that I can make more money. But we see the picture here where that love of money, that's where you kind of take a separate road and you start being less content with things and less content with the basic things of food and clothing, and really gives you a skewed perspective then of, even with your food and clothing, like, you can't take it with you when you go.
Yeah.
And so sometimes we strive so much to get all this stuff, and then we realize at the end it's like, oh, none of that really mattered in the grander scheme of things. And what I can actually pass on is stuff that is character.
Yeah.
What we can pass on to those around us and people that are near and dear to us is a heart of being content, and being content in all things, and not letting ourselves really be robbed of that, because that's really what we're after when we're trying to make more money, or we're trying to build a good house, or we're trying to live in a good neighborhood, or we're trying to get a nice car, or we're trying to get to work, we're trying to have a good job, all this stuff. We're trying to arrive at a place where we can be like,
right. Yeah.
but what if that place was already there and available for us if we just leaned back into Jesus and we were just calm in that? And then you're letting circumstances come to you,
Right.
instead of you chasing down every opportunity and beating yourself up. But what do you think about that, Danny? I've been talking a lot.
I mean, yeah, it's a very, very almost unnatural perspective to have. And I think that's the thing, because I think in the past I've said, like, from the day we're able to understand, we're basically taught that, you should be getting a good job, you should be making good money, you should be.
It's a measure of success.
You want to be able to go on vacations with your family and this and that. And like, that's not bad. Like, sure, going on vacations with your family is fine. Like, but again, if that's all you care about, like, there's clearly an issue there. And I think it's, again, for someone like me, like, I'm very, very goal oriented. So it's very hard for me personally, I know, to find a balance between, like, and I also have a very obsessive personality. So it's very hard for me to find that balance of, okay, I have this goal, here's my time, like, allocating that time is pretty much all going to that. And then all of a sudden God's over here like, what happened?
Yeah.
And so I have to be very, very careful with, okay, how am I allocating my time? Am I doing it right? Is God still number one? Because yeah, it's like, especially as a young person, it's very easy. And I think to have like that vision of what I want my life to be like, right? But you have to catch yourself and be like, but what does God want my life to look like? And how can I ultimately find that? Not how can I find the way to what this vision, this worldly vision of life I have, but how can I find God's vision and then therefore pursue that? Because yeah, like you said, you will never, and even now, like, I've learned this, it's like, you get a car, you're like, sick, what's next, so even then it's like, you will never sit back and be calm and content if you pursue things of the world, because there's always something else. Whereas, but what's funny is there's always something else that will perish. The only, like, the one true thing you want, which is God and that peace, that's the thing that will last forever. And yet the world does a very good job of steering our attention away from
Yep.
it, you know?
Yeah. And it's sad though too, because sometimes I think it comes from us just being a little bit short-sighted, if we're being totally honest with ourselves, that we're looking at things like, okay, even example with the coffee here. This wasn't meant to satisfy me for all eternity.
We know.
Right? And sometimes people put slogans like guaranteed to satisfy. Well, not really. It'll satisfy you till you get to the bottom of it, or till you get about halfway and you're like, oh man, that was really good, or oh man, I've had too much, or whatever. Right? Things, possessions, clothing, cars, houses, all that stuff. It wasn't originally meant to satisfy you fully. Like there's some things where they actually even will build that into where they want it to break, so you buy a new one, right? They want you to get addicted to that, so you want more, right? They want you to get comfortable with, oh, well, I always have had this. Now I really, there's a dependency on it, right? To be content gets increasingly difficult if we don't believe that Jesus is enough. We'll always be fighting that. And if we're in tandem with that, if we're also looking to things that weren't even made to satisfy us in the first place, like Jesus is enough. That if you spent your whole life studying his words, whole life living your life according to his teaching, doing the things that he was about, you would be a very content person and a very satisfied person. And you wouldn't have attached to that, and he made a lot of money, and he did this. You might, but that's not going to be your primary thing, you know? And can Jesus trust you with a little bit? Can Jesus trust you with more? Can Jesus trust you with even more, right? There's these little benchmarks and sometimes even these tests where we go through to see like, okay, are you still content? And if God gives you more, is that going to mess with that or destroy that? Like, why would a good God give you more if he knows that you're not content or satisfied with what you have? Like, that's backwards. That's not that wouldn't be a good thing to do, you know? And I think it's difficult sometimes because we need to gauge that, and kind of set our expectations back a little bit where we're not just like, well, I won't be happy until ... you know, or I'm always chasing this elusive thing.
Right. And I think and I don't remember if I used this example on this podcast, but either way, I find it really helpful for myself. But you know how they say that like the rat poison is 99.9% food, 1.1% arsenic, right? That's what kills the rat. And so I think it's so interesting when you look at the what the world will tell you, right, is figure out what you love, right? This is your passion, pursue that, and you will be happy. And if it's truly what you love, you'll keep doing it, and then the money will come, right? Okay, now that's almost true. If you just shift it a little bit over to, is this what God wants? Because if it is, you will be passionate about it if you love him, and possibly the money will come. But even if it doesn't, like you will be content and you will be taken care of. Yeah. So just shift it a little bit over, and that's actually accurate. Yeah. But they just skew it just enough to where it's completely wrong, but that's what does it. Yeah. And so I just think it's interesting how the devil does that. Like he just does it just enough. Yep. To where it still seems like, oh yeah, that makes sense. That's a good cause. But like, is it?
Well, and going right back to that verse where people who want to get rich fall into temptation and a trap, and into many foolish things and harmful desires that plunge men into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. That verse can be misrepresented, right? He's not saying money is evil, right. But the love of money is the root of that. Where when you put your heart into that, or when you put your hope into that, or you again place your contentment on, I'll be content if I get this much money, if I'm a millionaire, if I have a sweet job, if I have all this stuff, that is a trap. And the reason why it's a trap, I mean, with any good trap, right? You don't know you're in it until you're caught, right? Right. And so that's also the thing with the love of money is it's like, okay, the traps that get set in that is, hey, buy this and you'll be really happy. You know, invest in this and you'll really strike it rich. Or if you have this much money, you're a good person, right? or you're a success story,
Yeah,
or whatever.
yeah,
It's like,
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
that's we can't do that. We can't afford that. That's something that is way too costly to our hearts, to our minds, to our walk with God. And so, our encouragement to you guys this week is just that you would be content wherever you're at with whatever's going on. And that doesn't mean that you don't have vision. That doesn't mean that you just like, well, yeah, whatever, I'll just be happy with my miserable state, or, whatever, wherever you're at in life right now.
I'm going to just sit on this couch
Yeah,
and
I'm
not
just going to
leave.
sit on this couch because I'm content, because
Yeah.
Josh said to be content in everything. So I'm just going to, no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that can you be grateful? Can you be thankful? Can you be encouraged and even happy where you're at right now? And look around you and see the things that you've been blessed with right now. See the people that you have in your life, even if it's just a few. Mm-hmm. Be content in that, because as you invest in that, as you invest in being content, you're going to see things differently. You're also going to get better perspective, and there's going to be good things that get added to you then after that point, where you'll be able to fully appreciate them then too.
Yeah, for sure.
Because you're not going to be looking to that thing or to that relationship or to that whatever for that contentment. You're already going to be there. It's just going to be extra. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so that's my hope for you guys. Be content, y'all.
Don't Jimmy your way into the gas station pump.
Yeah.
In your
just
big truck.
Wait.
Yeah.
Just wait. Okay.
Because you could be giving someone anxiety.
Because Danny was just sitting there. He forgot that he had to pump his own gas.
Yeah,
right?
I was just sitting there at Fred Meyer, and I'm like, yo, where is this for? So I get out of the car, I'm like,
he's beeping his horn.
Yeah, I get out of the car, I'm like, oh.
Oops. My bad.
Yeah, put the pump in. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, guys.
See you next time. Ciao. Over and out. What else do they say?
Sing a song.
Das Vidania. Nah.